Hi guys, my name is Natalia and welcome back to my channel. So today I want to share with you my December wrap up as well as my January TBR. So I read 5 books in December and I want to talk about them, so let's get into it. The first book that I read is called Slewfoot. It's set in 1666 Puritan England. This book blends historical fiction with fantasy and folklore. It is a rather dark read. It was extremely atmospheric, but it is like a horror as well. So I definitely suggest maybe check the trigger warnings before you read it. There was this one scene that left me like so distraught. I literally wanted to throw this book away and stop reading it, honestly. I didn't. I did come back to reading it and I ended up giving it 4 stars. But that scene was just so cruel and brutal, and me being quite a sensitive person, I couldn't get through the scene. It was so hard to read it. I mean, it does show like the reality of those times, and I mean, obviously there are brutal things happening even these days. So while it was really hard to read it, I understand it was meant to be realistic, although maybe I wish that one scene just never happened. But anyway, other than that one scene that just made me kind of traumatized, I did enjoy the rest. I would say maybe the middle part of the book was a bit too slow. The first part and the last part were like rather fast-paced and they were really intriguing and they just made me want to keep reading. And then the middle part was just dragging a little bit. I wanted things to speed up a little bit because I was getting bored. Other than that, I really, really loved the protagonist, Abatha. So she's always had like quite a hard life trying to adjust to the Puritan lifestyle because she was not born into this society. She like became a part of it through marriage, but things got even more complicated when her husband died and she became a widow in a society that was like really against her at all times, and she was really trying so hard to survive on her own, but it was just too hard. So she had to end up using some supernatural help. That supernatural help being like a mysterious creature that woke up in the forest. So they kind of like start working together, and our protagonist will also like dabble in witchcraft, which obviously in a Puritan society, that's quite risky. It will not really end that well for her, but definitely the ending of the story was really satisfying. Overall, it was a very, very atmospheric read. It was just so eerie and dark. I feel like it's a great read for either fall or winter. So I think if you are into dark and atmospheric reads, be sure to check it out because it definitely left a huge impression on me. Like I said, I still can't stop thinking about it. I don't think I will ever forget this book. Okay, next I read a non-fiction book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. I've wanted to read it for quite some time. In this book, the author teaches us how to make good habits and how to break bad habits. And I ended up giving this one 5 stars because I think it was so helpful to me and it just helped me change the way I think about habit formation, being successful and all of that. There were so many cool concepts that I actually have not heard about before. So I found the advice in the book very useful. For instance, I love that the author really puts the emphasis on our identity. So, instead of saying like, I want to read more, you try to make this thing become a part of you, a part of your identity. So you say, I'm a reader, or you want to write a book. So you say, I'm a writer. When like this becomes part of your identity, you will be definitely more likely to actually stick to your habits because, it will make you feel satisfied because it is who you are. I also like the concept of focusing on like 1% of improvement. So even if you just give your 1% every single day, it might not seem like a lot, but it's going to really build up over time and really bring amazing results. So actually I do struggle with that because I think part of the reason why it's hard for me to form a habit is because whenever I make a decision to study or work out or whatever, I always feel like I have to give my 100%. I have to study for this many hours, or I have to work out for this much time. And if I don't do that, I feel like I failed. Point is, instead of doing it for a very long time and giving you 100%, it's important to do it consistently every day. So, studying, even if it takes like 20 minutes every day, same with working out. Doing it consistently will help you create that habit. I honestly think everyone should read this book. Even if you're not a huge nonfiction reader, I feel like everyone can find something useful and helpful in this book. It was just such a pleasant read that just made me think a lot about my life and how I've been spending it. So it was very like motivational and inspirational. So, since we've got like New Year, if you feel like you need some motivation or inspiration, then definitely go and check out this book. The next book that I read in December is called Spectacular by Stephanie Garber. It is a Christmas themed novella. And it's recommended to read it after you're done with the Caraval trilogy. I'm a huge fan of the Caraval trilogy. I really like this series. So when I heard that there's like a Christmas themed novella coming out, I was so excited. Also, the cover is so beautiful that I just bought it immediately. And I read it like right before Christmas. So I feel like it really helped me get into the Christmas spirit and feel, the holiday vibes. It was just so magical and I loved reading it during the Christmas time. I ended up giving it 4 stars, but there are some things that I didn't like that much. First of all, if you love Scarlett and Julian, be prepared that there's not many scenes with them. This story is like really focused on Donatella and Legend as well. There's really not a lot of Scarlett and Julian in it, which is sad. They're like background characters and it makes me sad because they are my favorites personally. I guess Stephanie prefers Legend and Donatella, so that's why they appear so much in this book. But yeah, as someone who really loves Scarlett and Julian, I was a bit disappointed. And also, even Donatella's story felt a bit off at times. At a few points, the story felt a bit disturbing, and I felt like it should be more like cute and festive. Obviously, I understand that for a book to be like really interesting, you need some like tension. But I don't know, I found some parts of this book a bit disturbing, but overall, like the entire vibe of this book, it is really cute and cozy. So that's why I ended up giving it 4 stars. And also maybe it's because I just love the Caraval trilogy. So maybe it's just like my sentiment for this whole series that made me rate it 4 stars. And this book also has a lot of really, really beautiful illustrations. And I think that's also why I rated it so high, because just these illustrations were so beautiful. Let me give you an example. So here's one of them. There's a lot more. So overall, I think if you've read the Caraval trilogy and you enjoyed it, then I think reading this book is definitely a fun way to revisit this magical world and spend some more time with the characters while soaking up some holiday vibes. So if you haven't read it this year, it's still winter, so you can still pick it up, I guess, or you can leave it for next year's Christmas. But generally I did enjoy it, even though there were a few letdowns, but it was still a very atmospheric and magical read. The next book that I read, it's another novella. This one, it's Killjoy. So this is like a prequel to A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. So I already read that series. It's one of my favorite series of all time. Basically, the events in the book take place before A Good Girl's Guide to Murder starts. and Pip goes to like a murder mystery party with her friends, and they're all like dressed up as certain characters, and they are supposed to, find out who killed one of the people that were in the house. So I gave it 3.5 stars. Like, it was definitely a fun read. It was really short because it's a novella. Yeah, maybe it's because I read it like after the series, so it was just weird to come back to, a time before all of these events from the first, second, and third book took place. It just felt so crazy and surreal. I definitely liked the idea of a murder mystery party. I feel like this is something that I would like to take part in. It sounds like so much fun. Overall, it was definitely interesting to see Pip, like, she was so invested in this. And, knowing that later she will be investigating an actual murder mystery, it was just really cool to see her like develop this side of her. But it's just not really as deep as the actual books in this series, and I feel like if I hadn't read it, like, not much would have changed. So I enjoyed it, but it wasn't anything spectacular. It was just a nice little read. If you are a great fan of this series, you might want to pick it up. But other than that, if you're not a huge fan of this series, or like if you're about to start it and you're wondering if you should start with this novella, I think you don't have to. I really don't think that reading this changed much in my life or changed like the way I think about this series. I definitely would have enjoyed a novella that takes place after the events from like the third book, for example, or any other book. Honestly, I usually find novellas like this to be a lot more fun because like you already know the characters and like the story is already like developed or developing. But here, we were like back to square one before anything took place. So yeah, it was like hard for me to really get into the story, I think, because of that. Okay, and the last book that I read in December is called Killer Instinct. So it is the second book in the Natural series by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, and oh my god, I loved this so much. I loved the Naturals as well. I gave the Naturals 4.5 stars, but after reading this one, there were so many emotions going through me. I ended up giving it 5 stars because it was so good. This entire series basically follows a group of teenagers that have like special abilities, and they are recruited by the FBI to help them solve cold cases. But both in the first and the second book, they will actually end up kind of working on active cases. But it's definitely a lot more dangerous and risky than working on a cold case that happened a long time ago. I feel like this one was even better than the first book. Like, I don't know, I just felt like it was a lot more intense. A lot of this storyline was like connected to Dean's dad, and Dean is one of the teenagers in this program. So I felt like it was just so personal and so intense. It was really fast paced. The chapters are really short. That's what I like about Jennifer Lynn Barnes' books. She writes like really short chapters. The pace of her books is always really fast. So I was eating this book up. It was just such a fun journey. I will admit that I kind of predicted one of the plot twists. I'm saying one because obviously there are like a lot more plot twists, but one of them I actually predicted, which I'm kind of proud of myself for doing that, because usually I cannot predict the plot twists in thriller books. Usually I have no idea, but this time I managed to predict it. So I don't know, maybe my detective skills are getting better after reading so many thriller books. I don't know. But even despite that, there were still a lot of moments that made me gasp in shock. There's like a love triangle between Cassie, the protagonist, and Dean and Michael, and I feel like it's kind of coming to an end. I really hope that it is. I don't want this love triangle to just keep on dragging for the entire series. I am Team Dean, so I definitely hope that you know, they can be together in the next book and Michael can back off. No offense to Michael. So I feel like the characters being so interesting and likable, and the plot being like so fast-paced and intense and full of shocking plot twists is what makes this book so interesting and memorable. I'm so excited. There are still 2 more books in this series, and I'm so excited to pick them up, and I'll let you guys know what I think about the rest of this series. So these were all the books that I read in December, and now let's move on to my January TBR. First book that I already started reading is Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. So this book is set in the same world as the Caraval trilogy, but we follow a different protagonist. I really can't wait to dive into this book and this series because I've heard so many people rave about it, and so many people said it's even better than the Caraval trilogy. I really enjoyed the Caraval trilogy, so if so many people say that this is even better, then honestly I'm so excited. It sounds like a really atmospheric and whimsical, you know, fantasy with romance elements in it, so I'm really excited to read it. Also, the cover is really beautiful, so yeah, I'll let you know what I think about it. The next book on my TBR is another very popular, very hyped book that I should have read a long time ago. But, you know, I'm finally diving into it. The book I'm talking about is Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. Pretty sure there's like a 3rd book coming out this year in this series, so I have to, you know, read and catch up quite quickly. I'm definitely excited. I will admit I have high expectations because of how hyped this book is, but it sounds really promising. It's, you know, a fantasy book with dragons, a competitive school setting, and a really strong and powerful protagonist. It also has romance in it. From what I've heard, it's enemies to lovers, so it really sounds like everything that I would enjoy in a book. So I'm really excited to dive into it and see what the hype is all about. The next book that I really want to read is called House of Hollow. I think the cover is so stunning. It is a like dark fantasy / horror book with gothic and magical realism elements in it. It tells a story of 3 sisters that return from a mysterious disappearance, but they're like not really sure what happened to them. It happened when they were children, and it also left them with this like identical half moon scar at the base of their throats. Fast forward to the future, her eldest sister Grey goes missing, and our protagonist starts to realize that the only way to like save her sister is to decipher the mystery of what happened to them as children. And she also learned that Grey was actually keeping quite a lot of secrets from her. So it sounds like a very dark and atmospheric read with a really intriguing mystery. So I'm really excited to dive into this haunting read and let you guys know what I think about it. And the last book that I want to read this month is All In by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. So it is the 3rd book in the Natural series. Like I mentioned earlier, I finished reading the 2nd book in December, and it got me so excited to continue this series. I decided I want to finish it as soon as possible, so I'm definitely diving into All In this month, and probably next month I will dive into the last book in the series as well. I already talked about this series in the first part of the video, so I don't think I have to repeat myself much. I'm pretty sure it will be just as intense and full of plot twists and fast-paced as the first 2 books in this series, so I'm really excited to continue reading this series. And that is it for my December wrap up and my January TBR. So let me guys know what books are you starting your new year with, like what book are you reading right now, or what books are you excited to read this month. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.